Ministry, Pope Francis said in a quick newspaper article a couple of years ago, I see the church as a field hospital. And this is the actual quote where it came from. And of course, the justification is pretty simple. If somebody has high cholesterol and somebody's missing a limb, you don't just go in order. You serve the most broken first. When I think of a surgical hospital, I think of MASH. How many people remember MASH? Raise your hand or thumbs up. Sometimes there's replays of MASH, but us kids in our 40s, those Gen Xers, we were raised on this show in the 80s, and I would argue maybe the greatest show of all time. What's amazing about MASH is that it was funny. I mean, it was side-splittingly funny. The movie's funny too, but I'm talking about the TV show. The movie is wildly inappropriate, but it's also really funny. But the TV show is hilarious. But then the next episode would be like super dramatic. And I mean like tear-jerkingly dramatic. Like it's an emotional roller coaster. The mission statement of a surgical hospital is to get the patient stabilized and then to get the patient home. And the methodology is triage, to serve the most injured first. Okay, here's what they never did on MASH. They never ran up to those creepy Korean War helicopters to get the patients off and said, we're going to get you patched up and we're going to get you back out to the front lines. They never said that, and they don't say that today. It's about stabilizing to get them home. And that mission statement is profound. And it's very much a relevant metaphor for what we're trying to ask moms and dads to be and to do. And that's to minister to their children for the purpose of triage, health in brokenness, and to deliver them home. And of course, for us, that means salvation. That's a really big deal. So helping mom and dad know their role is a great place to start. Now, this can get a little bit confusing because I am keenly aware that the catechism says mom and dad are the primary catechist for their children. And I think that's fine. And if mom and dad are dialed into that role and they're succeeding, kudos to them and I affirm them. But I know across the country that that's not the norm. I know that sometimes the response to that statement, where the primary catechist, is to homeschool our children and to create an educational environment in our homes for them. For some people, that works extraordinarily well. And for some people, it doesn't. People have their kids in public schools. They have their kids in Catholic schools. They're not around their kids all the time. I have no judgment to offer for either one of those situations. My kids go to public school. They're extremely well catechized. So there's no one way to navigate that. What's challenging is that the role is really that the parents are an evangelist and then a catechist. Now be careful when you hear that and when you say it, because that no way, shape, or form dilutes the value of catechesis. It is not saying catechesis isn't important. What it's saying is that the evangelization element of the Christocentric relationship is supposed to happen first. And this is where a lot of us as parents and a lot of families are struggling. Give me the materials and I'll try to go over them with my kid. And it's catechetical, but there's never been an evangelization moment, a relationship moment. I've never met an over-evangelized Catholic. I've met plenty that are under-evangelized and under-catechized. And I think getting those in order and teaching moms and dads to do it is the righteous step forward. So many of you know Bishop Barron. He's a great guy. He has the best definition of evangelization I've ever seen. By the way, and I forgot to mention this, I apologize. I sent David my slides. So he actually has a PDF of all my slides, and he'll send them to you for free because I want you to have some of these quotes just for your memory and whatnot. So I apologize. So being contagious, compelling, and enthusiastic in faith is evangelization. So there's the good news, Jesus is risen, the euangelion, and then sharing that in a contagious, compelling, and enthusiastic way. I love that definition. It's succinct and it's authentic. Very quickly, let's break down the words. What's it mean to be contagious? Social distancing, quarantined Americans, right? Do we catch it from being around each other? And I don't mean catch it because you yelled at me. I mean, do I catch it because of who you are, how you articulate, how you speak, your vocabulary of faith, your demeanor? I'm not talking about the famous quote that St. Francis of Assisi never said, preach the gospel at all times and if necessary, use words. I'm talking about you and faith and your life being an expression of faith. Do I even catch that from being around you? Because I assure you, many of you, we do. We catch just from being around you. What's it mean to be compelling? To compel someone is to help them want to move. It's not to push them. It's to help them want to move. So movement is part of the message. I want to be more because you're more. I'm moved to grow in faith because you move me by your words in your life. That's a profound concept. And the last one, enthusiasm, it's not just for extroverts. It's not just about being happy and being outlandish. It's a theological concept. Entheos means that God's inside of me and wants to come out. So is God coming out of you? Is the Lord, the sacramental Lord, coming out of you? These are profound words, and they're a great concept. And you should know, too, way back in 2012, there was a synod on evangelization. This is all the great thinkers in church at the time. They are getting together and saying, let's articulate what it means to bring new ardor to teaching the faith. And look at this quote. This is from one of the letters that was sent from the synod. It was basically a press release. The new evangelization requires personal and communal conversion. That means change, by the way. New methods, something new, renewal of structures, maintenance to mission. That's the title of like 15 books that have been published since 2012, by the way, from maintenance to mission. Look at what the church's leadership is saying to us as ministers to be doing. Renewing pastoral structures for purposes of conversion. And I want you to think about that, because I think a lot of times we point our fingers at church and we say, no, we're not really a church of change. We're very stalwart. And that could not be further from the church when it comes to spiritual intuition and how we instruct moms and dads to be great representatives of faith. And think about the context of our current situation, where moms and dads, maybe for the first time, are gathering in the living room and having conversations about Jesus in ways they never have before or have relied on church to do for them. So this is a profound opportunity. If you're not familiar with the narrative, Luke 24, the road to Emmaus, like anything in ministry, it gives us a brilliant concept of how we do this. The road it's an unbelievable story. The two that are leaving Jerusalem, presumably followers of Christ, had their own perspective of who he was, going to a place in the external, away from the city of truth, wandering away. And of course, what does the Lord do? He meets them on the road as they're leaving. And what's the first thing he does? He just listens. He listens to their reality. So he puts himself in their presence and allows them to give their version of what they think this Jesus fella is. Listening and walking first. These are brilliant, brilliant bits of advice for us when working with moms and dads and helping them to become ministers. We need to just listen and walk before we bark and critique. And we need to teach moms and dads to just simply listen. Listen to the reality of your children and walk with them in their journey. It doesn't mean you have to condone behaviors if they're leaning away from church. Also doesn't mean that you need to steer them in a direction that's maybe not towards truth. And then, of course, what does the Lord do? He gives them the greatest Bible study in the history of Bible studies. He gives them the entire salvation history while walking on the road. And it leads to the table. It leads to that sacramental place that all of us know when we're not quarantined in our homes, where we come to that altar, that place of realization. But by the time they've gotten there, what have the young people done? They've invited him to stay. And in his human form, he doesn't. He kind of fades away from history. And then there's the famous line in Luke 24. It was in the breaking of the bread we realized, oh my gosh, that was Jesus. And it gives them a memory of their time together and sends them running back to the upper room, which is not like a happy ending, by the way. Running back to the upper room is running back to the doubting Thomas moment, running back to fear, running back to what becomes Pentecost, which becomes a spreading of the church, which becomes persecution. It's not some happy ending film. Why am I ranting about this? Because this narrative is the lesson plan that the church has given us for how to minister to young people. And a lot of our parents have no concept of the vocab that I put on this slide. We think these are buzz youth ministry terms, accompaniment, encounter, and mission. What they are scriptural terms. They're the terms that were laid out for us in Luke 24 that we can use in our vocabulary to help moms and dads better minister to their own children. Pope Benedict, when he oversaw the synod, he part of the extraordinary symbol of the synod's statement is this line here. The new evangelization guides us to an authentic pastoral conversion, again, change, which moves us to attitudes and initiatives, which leads to evaluations, which means look at what you're doing or what you're not doing well, and that those dynamics are going to change when structures aren't necessarily working in the way that they once did. What this is saying to us as ministers is creative license. We can look at the structure of how we pass the faith on to our children, and we can poke at it and say, wait a minute, maybe there's a better way to do this. And my contention, based on the data, would be evangelization, then catechesis. Teaching moms and dads to be authentic witnesses, and how would we go about doing that? And it comes down to a concept that is not innovative on my part. It's just simply daring. Something that we're very, very strictly missing in how we walk our parents through a relationship with teaching the faith is disciplining and learning a vocabulary of the Holy Spirit. Please, please, please recognize in the power of the entire scriptural narrative, whenever there is a teaching moment of any kind, there's a profound presence of the Ruach, or the Holy Spirit, as we call it in modern Catholicism. This means, do we even have an openness to the Spirit in our families? If you're looking for an entry point with moms and dads to become the primary catechist and the evangelist of their family, the entry point is to discuss an invitation to the Holy Spirit in its fullness into their home. Are you getting out of your way and making room for the Spirit to be the teacher? I can't believe I had a great liturgy of the word experience at home with my kids a couple of weeks ago. It was one of the first weekends where we didn't have mass, and it was the reading of the healing of Lazarus. And I remember sitting and we're going through the readings, the Old Testament, the Psalm, the New Testament, and we get to the gospel, and of course it's the Lazarus narrative, and he waits, and then he goes to Bethany, and so on and so forth. And at the end of it, we did kind of a Bible study with our kids, and I asked my kids, hey, what did you hear? What'd you see? And my 12-year-old leaned in and goes, Dad, I had no idea that the Spirit was so present all the way back in the Old Testament and all the way in the New Testament. And when he waits before he goes to Bethany, he's clearly giving us an opportunity to learn about the Spirit. And I was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking too, hon. Yeah, huh? She had picked up on the fact that this power of the Lord was so present in ministry. And I can tell you right now, this is not the norm for when we've worked with moms and dads and families to grow in an understanding. So growing in an understanding and a comfort level with the Holy Spirit and its language is the first successful step. And the second one is teaching moms and dads to grow in their prayer life, in their personal spirituality. Let me read you this quote. And I'd love, if you're in chat right now or you have the opportunity to chat, kick out your reflections on this because I think it's profound. We'll just kind of Lexio this for a minute. I think a lot of us need to forget about God's will for my life. God cares more about our response to his Spirit's leading today in this moment than about what we intend to do next year. In fact, the decisions we make next year will be profoundly affected by the degree to which we submit to the Spirit right now in today's decisions. It's easy to use the phrase, God's will for my life, as an excuse for inaction or even disobedience. It's much less demanding to think about God's will for your future than it is to ask him what he wants you to do in the next 10 minutes. It's safer to commit to following him someday instead of this day. I love this statement. This statement is designed to remove anxiety from ministers. It's designed, what the concept here is that holiness is an urgent invitation. Moms and dads are overwhelmed by responsibility, and they've many times partitioned the responsibilities of raising kids in the faith by bringing them to the institutional church and trusting in the great ministry that the church can offer. And that's not a bad thing at all. The challenge is there's an intimacy with mom and dad and young people that may be missing, and it almost always is the result of not increasing a relationship with the Spirit and a prayer life that helps them grow as adults. They can never evangelize their own kids without a prayer experience, without a prayer life. This is the entry point. If the entry point for us to serve families is, let me just whip up some curriculum and give you a bunch of stuff to do, because that's what we're doing at the church, I assure you, if the concepts of parents as evangelists and that their evangelization is a result of their spiritual relationships, if those concepts are not navigated, your curriculum, your programming, all the ministry you want to happen in families will not succeed. Not anywhere near what the expectations can be. Where their families are dialed in spiritually, they're praying, and their vocabulary is an extension of their prayer life, you'll see success. But many times we're missing the mark. So this invitation really matters. Can we ask moms and dads that question? How's it going? How are you spiritually? Because my job is to support you spiritually, to help you have a prayer life. And then it gets worse, guys. There's no excuse. We have an opportunity in the modern era to engage spiritual assistance on a personal level in our pocket at all times. I'm a huge advocate for prayer apps and prayer experiences. Huge advocate, because here's what it does. It takes away our excuse. I don't have time. False. You can have the readings read to you. I don't know where to look. False. Here's 1,000 places. I don't have access. False. You probably have a phone. There's so many ways that we can give moms and dads the tools to grow spiritually, which translates to evangelization and then good catechesis, and we're missing the steps. And these are profound tools. I'm a huge advocate of podcasting, giving up time during the day to listen and grow in faith. These instruments, you have to understand, were not around 15 years ago. Let's get a breviary for mom and dad. Let's get mom and dad to watch this VHS Little Rock Bible study. Let's get them to come to our thing. Most places, those types of gatherings are not necessarily growing, or they're reaching a ceiling. We have an opportunity to be reaching families in their homes and starting with the correct first two questions, which is, why are you doing this, and how will you be successful? And that's what we want you to engage with, this type of concept. You can make parents better spiritual praying Catholics, and that will translate into great family ministries. And if you think that programming without those pieces is going to succeed, we're making the same mistake we've made for 25 years. And the church at its highest level is saying there's a better way to evangelize. I love the parents' prayer. I found this the other day, or not the other day, I found it a couple months ago, and I had it kind of in the backlog of what I was doing, and I was revisiting this training in service, and I thought, man, this is exactly the language of Emmaus for moms and dads. Like, come to my home, Lord, and fill the room, and be the teacher, and let me be a vehicle so that my children hear your voice, see you in all things, proclaim who you are. Those things are not going to be the results of some program. They're going to be the results of the great vocabulary of faith that comes from a relationship with Spirit. And if you're going to give advice to parents specifically, it's really in 4 parts. Where is prayer at home? Where are you using prayer language at home? Not just in prayer, but in encouraging prayer. Where are young people encountering Christ at home? That could be the dinner table. It can be all kinds of places, but we know that that encounter can happen. I'm not talking about a Eucharistic encounter. That's its own encounter. I'm talking about a communal Christocentric encounter, which can happen all the time. That can be art. That could be the media that you consume. Those are places where you can have those experiences. And last, how are you accompanying the young people in your home to grow in faith? We at ODB Films, we had an opportunity to partner with an unbelievable film company, Family Theater Productions, over the last 2 years. And I don't know if you're familiar or if you remember Father Patrick Peyton, but Father Patrick Peyton is amazing, this amazing Irish priest who came to the States and really predated some of the great media evangelization that Archbishop Fulton Sheen showed success in and whatnot. But we were able to partner with them and associate produce a film that's coming out actually in September called Pray, the story of Patrick Peyton. He's the priest who coined the term, the family that prays together stays together. So this is the guy. And I would encourage you in the coming 6 months to be aware of that as an opportunity and a tool for you to be able to share what it means to pray in your home. Something Patrick Peyton did that I think was fairly remarkable, and his legacy continues to inspire, is that he was absolutely fearless. If as a minister, we're afraid to offer spiritual assistance to moms and dads, I would encourage you as a minister to take that to the Lord. Take away this fear of me getting on the phone and calling the families in my parish community and checking in and saying, how can I serve you as the primary catechist for your children? I want to help you become a great evangelist, and begin to unpack different processes for them to grow in prayer. Technology can help you do that in a profound, positive way, but even just your personal relationship with parents will be a gigantic gift to them as family, okay? This is my contact information. Please understand that I am available to be contacted to continue any conversations, but what I'd love to do is throw out questions, comments, concerns, and quarrels, and put those all together so that we can discuss them together in our limited time, and maybe just get to some of the details and the strategies that can come with successful ministry to families. So if you'd like to unmute, or if you have a question, or you want to type it in the chat, I'd love to address some of those things now. And David, you can definitely moderate this. So if I miss something, kind of let me know. Let me know what you're doing to help families be ministers, and if you have any questions or comments.
I have some parents in our youth group that get all excited about starting things, and then the parents never show up, the kids never make it, they have things going on. I don't know how to get them more excited.
Excited to come to something or to do something?
I think if they came once, the kids would want to come again, but getting them there the first time, they talk a big game, but they don't show.
Yeah. I think there's two things in your question. I am all for gathered ministry and getting people to come to stuff. I'm all for it. I don't think it's the end all do all when it comes to ministering, though. So for some families, mine included. So I'm an active Catholic dad married to an active Catholic woman. And if you were at my parish and you invited me to your thing, we will not be there. We have 5 children, and we're navigating that reality, even though you're probably wonderful at what you do, because we're not able to do that in this phase of our life. But I think that the credibility of great gathering will speak for itself. So continue to be honest and never stop inviting. But I also think in ministry, there's a tremendous, tremendous pressure to earn the right to be heard. And sometimes we have to take our ministry efforts to moms and dads and kids and show them the giftedness and the blessing of that by way of invitation and spiritual challenges and the call to be great ministers at home, which then points their attention to the good work that we're doing, and we can complement them in both ways. Here's things you can do at home. Here's things we can do when we gather. And then your credibility, Rachel, that will grow as a leader of ministry in your faith community. I know that I have very, very, very consistently failed in parts of my youth ministry where I just kept inviting people to the stuff and they wouldn't come and I would get frustrated. But when I started to reach out and build relationships with those moms and dads and learn about their reality and their 5 sport children and the way that they've designated the priorities of their family, and I stepped into their reality and tried to help them as a parent, our credibility quintupled and their efforts to bring their kids to the ministry doubled because they were buying into what I was able to serve them in doing, not to mention just build a healthy, authentic adult relationship. So I think it's always kind of got to be both and. Thanks. That was a great question. All right. Everybody else has got it. This is great. Write the book because I'll read it. I promise. I'll even help you get it published. I know some people. I'm telling you.
So what about the parents that when we're talking to them and pointing out that they're the first catechist at home and the most important, and so many times they're going to say, oh, I can't be the catechist. I don't know my faith well enough.
Yeah.
And if you offer up ways, well, here's how you could maybe learn a little more if that's really true, then you get hit with, oh, I just don't have time for that. That's why I need you to do it all.
Right, right, of course.
What can we say to them?
Well, a couple things. One is they do have time. I mean, so I mean, the reality is there is time. Here's what I would do. I don't put the responsibility of mom and dad to be the primary catechist on them before I have a conversation about how they're doing spiritually. Like I don't even want to, what happens every time I have that conversation, like, hey, parents, you ought to be better at this. Here's a bunch of stuff. Mom and dad right away give me the response that you just did, which is I don't have time and I don't know how. And now the conversation's over because I'm an adult. So I'm going to give you the materials back and we're done. But if the conversation starts out with, hey, how are you doing spiritually? Like, how are you doing with the Lord? What's your personal prayer life like? I want to support just you. I'm not even talking about your kids. You personally, I want to help you grow in the Spirit. That is a completely different conversation and leads to a completely different reality, which is, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to pray. I don't have spiritual habits. I've never, ever X, Y, and Z. And you can be of tremendous assistance in that space. Here are 3 simple things to help you do that. And then when all that pressure of primary catechist and evangelist comes down, it's going to be the result of your prayer life that leads to successful strategies for evangelizing. That's a huge deal. I just think we put the cart before the horse, and we scare parents away. And I can tell you right now, as a youth minister, if I call a dad and he says, I don't have time, that's the end of the conversation. He's done with me. Like we're not going to move on from that place. But when I enter into spiritually checking in with him, especially if it's a man, like growing as a man and using that kind of language, I want to help you grow as a man. I'm a dad. You're a dad. Let me help you grow as a dad. Those types of questions and concerns, it's a completely different relationship. I just think that we're not having those types of conversations. Tabitha, this is a great comment. I see your comment up here and I love it. Strategies for home, specifically, Tabitha. Go ahead and turn off your mic real quick. Tell me more about what you're looking for. This is great.
I'm not even sure. That's why I'm here. It's been a very interesting time with my kids as I'm helping them with their education. And
how old are your kids?
I've got 7, 11, and 14-year-old.
Oh, I'm in there. I'm right in there. There. I got that. Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
So my 14-year-old, I've for a while I've sensed some distancing from him and not, kind of resistance to some of the things that, he's at that age. And so I'm wanting to have some strategies for him to see his parents, in a way that he would respect our viewpoint, I guess, about this. Now he's a teenager. It's a completely different scenario. My youngest was getting ready to have her first communion. And today I just overheard her tell her teacher online that she was kind of glad because she was scared about it. And
yeah, not uncommon.
Yeah, so I thought, okay, well, I have some work to do at home. This is an opportunity for me to do what I've always wanted to do, which is to have more time with them and to be that guide and evangelist to them. I'm just, the formal approach that, we try to sit down together as a family and let's read some of the scripture and let's have prayer time. We keep plugging away at it. But I'm not sure that I'm impacting them yet. I don't know.
What's the Sunday routine? What are you trying to do right now at home? Are you doing like the online mass thing or like what's working?
That has actually worked pretty well, surprisingly. I wasn't really nervous about it, but the kids get to pick which priest we watch for the day or what location we want to go to.
That's kind of fun.
Yes. Yeah,
hey, so it's not a sin, people. Just embrace it. That's all right. That's all right.
So they've gotten to let them take turns picking if they want to watch locally or they want to look at some other place. But then
Captain Handsome, Father Mike Schmitz, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Huh?
Or Bishop Barron's been a favorite.
That's right, Barron. Yeah.
So so we've done that. We do that usually at the end of the day actually, and that's been okay. And then we have some discussion with them a little bit after, but I don't know. I'm just seeking.
I think you know. I think you do know. You have to temper expectations. The reality of home ministries is that you don't get to decide how young people respond. You just don't get to. You never have. No one ever has. This is the beauty of youth ministry. You can be the greatest, most prolific presenter of the gospel in the world, but young people are still going to be like, well, that's nice. What's next? I mean, you don't get to determine their conversion. But what's beautiful is that the expression that you are creating into the home right now, it's profound. First of all, you're welcoming the scriptures into your home, which is just brilliant. Don't ever stop doing that. The power of liturgy of the word with young people, I would get Bibles in their hands if you're not already doing that. And I would strongly encourage finding as many different translations as you can find. And here's why. When you do liturgy of the word with kids, and you have different, like I use a Jerusalem Bible. My wife has an NRSV. My daughter has an NAB. I gave one of my daughters an NIV, and then I gave another daughter a Message Bible. This is great. So we're into the gospel, and right as soon as we're done, every one of them is like, mine did not say that. Mine said something different. So here's what they do. What do? They go back and they read through it again. And then they say, mine says this. And then I go, why do you think it said that? That's so different. And they're like, I don't know. And then they're looking at it, and all of a sudden they realize that there's an explanation in each one of the versions. And a conversation about truth permeates the veil of just reading and regurgitating scripture. And you're having Bible study and you didn't even try. You're just engaging the differences of dialogue. I've seen that with my 9-year-old who's special needs, my 12-year-old who lives in her own universe, and my 17-year-old who clearly knows everything and would like to teach us all everything. And they've all had that experience. So the way that you can kind of pull language apart with the church and have them be the ones asking hard questions, profound. Liturgy of the Word is power in the home, and diversifying your expressions is going to be key. The other one is maybe having some fun experimenting with devotions. I am not ashamed to admit, but it is a little bit embarrassing. I have not really had a profound relationship with the rosary. It's just sort of not been my life. I pray the rosary, but not super regularly. But one of my daughters, man, she is just dialed into the rosary. So, of course, since we're doing all this home stuff now, she's like, let's do a chaplet. Let's do this. Let's do these mysteries. And I'm like, all right. And then we do it. And then she's becoming this spiritual leader for her siblings. And it's kind of profound. And she's kind of evangelizing my wife and I. The other side of that is listening to some audio that is fairly intriguing, which would be like the podcast world. And then having the kids be like, what'd you hear? What'd you hear? What'd you see? The other part of that is great film. Now, I work for a film company, so I'm going to have a bias here. But I can tell you right now, we will tackle great films as a family, like Sunday night or Friday night or Saturday night, and the conversation always escalates towards the spiritual. And it gives the young people imagery to associate with ideology. And then the conversation escalates, and then they reference it. So sometimes great film, great audio can complement your great intentions, but also don't be afraid to shake it up and diversify. And I think those strategies are pretty solid. Yeah, start writing in your prayer apps. That's a great comment. Everybody loves Laudate. Laudate is great. I gave you that slide I gave you. We'll have a copy of a bunch that I think are really great. I love I Pietà. That's a great app. I'm a big fan of the Divine Mercy Chaplet app because it just kind of reminds me to pray it. I like the Pope app because you get these like sound bites every day from all different kinds of popes. So you feel like you're really connected to all kinds of leadership, which is pretty neat. I'm a fan of iBreviary. I really like the Divine Office app. I've talked about that before. The Divine Office app is a little different than iBreviary. The Divine Office app has a globe in the corner, and you can tap it, and it's rotating, and it has lights everywhere that someone's praying the app right now in the world. So you could pray like evening prayer with your family, and you click the globe, and kids are like, whoa, there's 700 people praying right now, the Divine Office app. And it's like this amazing lesson of solidarity. So my young people really like that app. It's a cool one. Great concerns, Tabitha. Thanks for your inquiry. Other comments? So I have to tell you about an experience I had yesterday because I think it's amazing. You tell me what you think of this. I got to be on a phone call with the lead animator for the latest Lion King movie, the one that just came out, the live action animated Lion King. He's a overwhelmingly talented digital artist, and he pitched our company an idea. He wants to create a 3D virtual reality prayer experience of Jesus Christ on the cross. And the image of Christ is the 3D of the Shroud of Turin. How amazing is that? So we're having a conversation about producing an experience where young people can pray at the cross with a Christ that is the shroud and interact with it in a VR way. And this guy, who's this professional designer, wants to do it. So we're kind of considering like, well, this would be a way to pray at home. Holy smokes. Transport yourself to this unbelievable Golgotha moment and interact with Christ. So pray for ODB Films. It's possible that we might be bringing that to a home app near you as much as possible. Well, wonderful, David. Thank you for the opportunity to be with folks. You have my contact information in the slides, and I would love to continue any conversations. Fire off an email or make any comments that you would like. I'm more than happy to serve you in whatever capacity that I can. I'm really thankful.
Could you take a moment to plug sorry, I'm blanking on the word now. The podcast that you do. You do a lot of great ones. Could you do a commercial for yourself on that, please?
I do commercials for myself all the time, David. Thank you. That's funny. We do 2 podcasts. One, though, Tabitha, this might actually serve you in a really great way. We do one called 2 Minute Takes, and it's a 90-second podcast. I think the shortest of its kind. I could be mistaken. And they actually syndicated on Catholic radio, Sirius XM 129. And we do little mini movie reviews of films that have Catholic teaching in them, Catholic themes, or just spiritual themes that you can watch and learn. And we do not discipline ourselves to rated PG. We'll talk about any film that has a profound teaching. And then, of course, we'll tell you, oh, this is probably appropriate for adults, not for kids. But it's a cool way to kind of seek out those great movies. Traditionally, we talk about films in the box office. But SiriusXM, as soon as the quarantine happened, they actually reached out to me and said, don't stop making these. Start making them about films you can stream or rent. So we have been. So we release about 1 or 2 of those a week, which is pretty exciting. The other one is called Renovo. It's Latin for renew, restore, or revive. And it's a deep dive podcast that's only 20 minutes long. It's a jog, it's a commute, it's a walk. And we have recorded 177 episodes, and they're all different topics, from stained glass to the civil rights movement, the Inquisition, to baptismal fonts, things in church, why they are what they are, where they came from, and what you ought to know about them. So it's a very, very compact teaching podcast that's designed for moms and dads, really, practicing Catholics, to just grow in their understanding. We don't ramble. It's not an hour. Some podcasts are just like an hour long, and you're like, oh my gosh, get to the point. That's not what this is. This is very much like, here's the idea, here's the deep dive, here it is, here's the next one, and moving on. So those might be helpful for folks to grow in understanding, or even to share with moms and dads for those quick, take a shower, turn on a podcast, whatever it is, for them to grow. Thanks, David. Thanks for the invitation to advertise.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because the ones I've listened to I really enjoy, and I think that they'd be good for a lot of people.
Great. Well, blessings, folks. I'm going to go have dinner with my family. I'm excited to see y'all. It's nice to see you again if I've seen you before, and I hope you have a really fruitful week. Happy Easter.
Easter. Thank you, Doug, for being here.
Easter to you. Thanks, Doug.
You bet. Blessings.
See you
Have a
next
good one.
week.
Yep.